I think a lot of times those bondages and those things that keep us trapped are because we're dwelling on things that we cannot control rather than acting on the things we can control. You can't determine the outcome of every situation, but you can predetermine how you'll respond to any situation. I just read that quote from this book, which was written by Rich Clay and myself, called Etudes. That is the chapter called Fortitude. And we're talking today about how to come back from a challenging situation.
Yeah.
And this book right here, literally all of the proceeds go to help young men come back from challenging situations.
Yeah.
That is what we are dedicating this book to. We have a whole chapter about it. Rich, you want to talk a little bit about the Victory Project in Dayton, Ohio?
Yeah, we're so excited to be partnering with Victory Project. It's just an amazing story of a former police officer who was injured and
You said shot in the head.
Shot in the head. Yeah. And has dedicated his whole life to seeing these at-risk kids get off the streets and make something of their life, teaching them entrepreneur skills. And he invited me to come in and teach leadership for 8 weeks. And while I was there, I fell in love with the kids. I fell in love with the program. And I had an idea for a book, and that book is Etudes, and all the proceeds from this book. So we're just praying this book just goes viral, because all the proceeds are going back to the Victory Project, and we see more kids coming out of the darkness into the light, coming out of poverty and into prosperity, and that is exciting for us. And there's a chapter, and the whole book really was, I got the vision while I was teaching them at the Victory Project.
So if you purchase a copy of this on Amazon using the link in the description, not only will you be supporting the Victory Project and helping these young men have a great chance at a successful life. There have been doctors and architects and a lot of success that has come out of this program from young men who may have taken their lives in a different direction had it not existed. Not only do you get to support that, but in 50 pages, you could read this thing on a flight. You could read this thing very quickly, and you will literally learn how to choose success, control your happiness, defend your dreams, connect with your soul, and elevate your perspective. And all of the books are custom to the reader because there are sections for you to specifically fill out and take time to connect with yourself and where you're at in your life. So every single book is custom to the reader, which is so cool. So we recommend you pick up a copy.
Absolutely.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And today we're talking about
comebacks. And the great philosopher Rocky Balboa said it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up.
That's true.
And so this is a favorite subject of mine. And what I love about this podcast is my perspective is coming from a 65-year-old, soon to be 66. Joey's 26.
Yep.
But there's so many similarities. I think in our world today, there's an attempt to separate generations, and I feel so sad about that because generations should be together. There's so much I can learn from Joey. There's so much Joey can learn from me. I think some of the cultures outside of America do a better job of honoring the family and honoring the elderly and the wisdom that we can draw from that. But it doesn't matter how old you are. You're going to have to come back from something. There's challenges, there's difficulties. Some are smaller, and when we look back on, most of them are smaller, but there's everything from, facing physical illnesses to relationship breakdowns to financial business collapse, all types of things that we're
failing
dealing
a
with.
class in high school. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Getting turned down for your, the first girlfriend, or your first, wanting to go date somebody and getting turned down for it. So, but we want to talk a little bit, not just about the challenges. We want to talk about how to build your comeback.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think that's what's important. And I love reading about ultra runners, people that run more than 26 miles, and people are doing crazy things.
Like
They're
ultra marathon.
ultra
yeah.
marathon. People are running 250 miles
Yep.
in the desert.
My wife's cousin did 100 mile. I mean, he was recovering for a month, but yeah, he did 100 mile race.
Yeah. And you know, and oftentimes people that are doing this stuff, they're coming off of some of life's toughest battles. People are doing things that are very, very challenging because they went through a challenging experience in life. And so it's part of their comeback. It's part of their comeback plan. And everybody has situations. I know, 4.5 months ago, I faced some not serious challenges, but enough that would keep me out of doing my exercise routine. I had 2 surgeries in 2 months. And what I found is being an active exerciser, not exercising, affected my mind as much as it did my body, because you get that dopamine kick in. But what really helped me was coming up with a comeback plan. And I that really got me through it.
So it like gave you the hope. Like you're like, okay, I've got these 2 surgeries lined up. I know I can't exercise for X period of time that the doctor said, but I'm not waiting a second longer, to get back to it. And like you were telling us and sharing with us some of your, you beat some personal reps and some personal records that you had before your surgery. You've beaten them after your surgery. So you're like back at like 110%.
Yeah, in certain areas I am, and that is exactly right. And let's break that down. I'll use that example because I think no matter what it is, if you build a strategy for what you're going to do today, the next day, and the following week, it keeps you from, I'm going to use an old term expression, down in the mully grubs. Okay. And so you'll have to define that for your generation.
Down in the dumps?
There you go. Okay. But
It's from the 80s.
but what I did is I immediately went and, okay, as soon as I got home from the hospital, they said I could walk. So I'm in the house walking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then they said at a certain period of time, I could exercise. And then a certain period of time, I could lift a certain amount of weight. And I sat down with my calendar and I mapped it all out until I reached a point where it had its start and it said, I'm free to go. I can do what I did in the past.
Wow.
And so 2 weeks into that, I broke a deadlift record. It was about 40 pounds more than I had ever done, and I was pretty shocked with that. Now, I'm not fully recovered in terms of cardiovascular and other things, but what kept me moving, this is the whole point of coming back, what kept me moving was having target goals. Where do I want to be? Instead of just looking at what have I lost, where do I want to be, and where do I want to go?
You controlled the controllables.
Exactly.
You could not control what the doctor told you. You couldn't control the dates on the calendar that he gave you, but you controlled the controllables, and you chose to leave the uncontrollables where they were, outside of your control. You did what you could do. You controlled the controllables. It's like controlling the controllables is basically like saying you can't predetermine every circumstance, but you can predetermine how you're going to respond in any circumstance, in any outcome. And I love that there are things that are there's in every situation, unless I'm wrong, but in every situation I've ever been in, there are certain things you can control. There's some things you can't, but there are some things you can. And a lot of times I think where people get stuck, and maybe where people who have gone through challenging surgeries and challenging situations, who may not yet have come out of them, or may have kind of stayed stuck in those areas, and maybe not even just a physical, maybe a relationship, maybe something that's led to this depressed cycle and this depression that's really hard to break out of. I think a lot of times those bondages and those things that keep us trapped are because we're dwelling on things that we cannot control rather than acting on the things we can control.
Yeah, I like what you did. Those things, guess what that is? That's self-talk. That's self-talk. And the reason why I like planning I stole that from a coach. I don't know who said it first, but he said, plan your comeback the day you face your challenge.
Wow.
So the day that doctor comes in and says, you're going to be out of commission for the next 4 months, start planning your comeback.
Wow.
And you have to be careful because self-talk.
Yeah.
Because self-talk comes in and says, okay, oh, look how much progress you made. Before I went, and I had to go to the emergency room, and before I went, before I went to the emergency room, I had been training 4 months for an event that I was going to do with my son in Chicago, and that was mentally depressing to know that I couldn't do that event. But the voice that will really get you is the voice that comes and says, you'll never be able to do it. You'll never come back. You'll never be the same. You'll never have a fulfilling relationship. You'll never have a meaningful life. You'll never lose the weight you want to. And that's the stuff you got to get rid of. And instead of dwelling on that, you get your pen and pencil, your pen and paper out, and you start planning your comeback. Nope. February 1st, I'm walking a half a mile.
Yes.
and you just, it doesn't matter how far you have to come back. That's not what's important. What's important is you are coming back.
You've decided you're not done.
You're not done.
And that's a decision that's up to you. You can actually choose that. You can choose success. You don't have to stop when a circumstance hits. This is a principle I actually have not heard until this day. I've not heard this before. Like, if somebody's out there and their company's downsizing due to economic whatever, if you lose your job, plan your comeback the day you lose your job. Now you have something to do. You don't even have time to focus on, what if I never get another job, or what if I can't get a job as good as this one that doesn't pay as well, blah, blah, blah. Take the time, build your comeback strategy. Maybe you didn't like that job as much as you thought you were going to, and you really wanted to start a business. Take time and build it. You know, maybe you can't, maybe there was a relationship that you've been in for a long time and it ended and it wasn't something that you were hoping was going to end. Plan your comeback strategy that day it happens instead of dwelling on the things that you can't control. That is it. I mean, that's advice for a lifetime. Mm-hmm. That is advice for an absolute lifetime. And I've not heard that before. Like, I mean, I know I know some of the principles are in the book, but I've never heard it so clear. Like, plan your comeback the day the situation arises.
Absolutely.
That's incredible.
You know, you go into the doctor and he says, oh, you have a torn meniscus in your knee. Okay. What are we going to do? How long is it going to take? Because I'm going to plan my comeback. Because within time, I'm going to be running even further than I ever ran before. I think it was an ultra marathon guy that I heard this from. He said, I give myself 24 hours to feel bad, and then I plan my comeback. So he takes 24 hours to absorb and to mourn and to maybe even feel a little self-pity. But then it's like when he wakes up, nope, now I'm into comeback.
Yep.
I'm into comeback mode. Because what happens, like, I didn't want to sit around and tell everybody, well, I had this and I had that and I had this and I don't know how long it's going. I wanted to say nope. And I actually text the gym that I work out at.
Yeah.
And I said, I will be there March 1st. And I was there, I think, February 28th.
That's fantastic.
I said, I'll see you on March 1st.
I feel like sometimes people, I've done it. Instead of planning my comeback, I plan my, whatever the opposite of that is. Like, well, I guess I'll never do that again. I feel like we start planning our retirement instead of our comeback. Like,
so you
said my
accept
meniscus.
it. You accept the
you
situation.
accept the defeat, and you're like, okay, now how do I live around this new defeat? You know, I'm guess I'm done. So what can I do to make myself comfortable in this worse situation?
Ooh, instead of planning a comeback, you plan a
You let the thing move in and live rent free in your house, and you start you make it cozy, and you try to make it as cozy as you can, but it's still not what you want.
Yeah. Now I can't get away from it. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a challenge, start planning the comeback.
Plan your comeback and plan to come back to this channel by subscribing and liking the video.
I love it.
Sorry, I had to.
Yeah, because you're going to get encouragement.
You're going to get encouragement. This show will help you. It's free. Sorry, table. It's free. The show is free. Come back and get encouraged every single week. You can listen to the episodes multiple times. I do. We post short content all over the internet. We've got a book. Just feed yourself with this channel and other channels like it. And with that, we thank you so much for joining us on this episode of 5 Ideas. Plan your comeback, and we'll see you on the next one.